Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest installment of the American Mussar Community Gathering. This week will be our first week studying equanimity. Which is calmness of the soul, being able to sort of maintain your calm through a multitude of different situations. And one of the things that helps us cultivate equanimity is meditation. So we will begin, as we always do, with a short meditation. So please relax in your chair and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car pass by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. To get started today, I think there's a really nice quote from Rabbi Jennifer Gubitz from the Mussar Torah Commentary. May I have a volunteer to unmute and read this out loud?
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh, that was a tough one. Equanimity is a state of through, through, which a person can face any situation without being moved from a centered self.
Probably is a state of being calm through which a person can face any situation without being moved from a centered self. Yeah, scan better quietly than out loud. But okay, thank you, Sue. I would just like to say for the record, I did keep my equanimity during the long silence as people were making up their minds. I'm gonna put this in the chat. So what are the hello. Okay, we got the young cat now. So what are, hey Paul, welcome. Hey Marjorie. So what are some of the things you notice about Rabbi Gubitz's definition of equanimity? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Yeah, Sue.
I'm really curious about the centered self. What does that mean? Like,
Hmm.
I feel like, oh, okay, if I'm centered, it actually makes me feel better. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm just exploring that centered.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question because when we're talking about like equanimity, there's a lot of terms like centered, grounded. And so, yeah, that's something we can explore. Bonnie.
I think that I feel like I'm on a seesaw and I haven't seen centered in a while.
Yeah.
I think between trying to get ready for Pesach, no matter how early I started, I'm still never ready. And what's going on the college campuses is just
Hmm.
throwing me off the teeter-totter, let alone being in the center. I don't know how other people feel, but I'd love to see that center.
Yeah, I hear you, Bonnie. These are difficult times. And I think as I said in my email today, it's like, how many emails can I write? During difficult times practicing ex me dode, and it seems like there's always something, there's some new thing. You just start to sort of get used to the last, disruption, and then there's a new one. Marjorie.
I see the word centered for me as not being smack in the middle. It's just being a calm, for me, it's a calmer self. That's how I interpret centered for my being. And yeah, I'm gonna splay out from that at time to time, but I can do that while still being rational and calm.
Hmm. Thank you, Marjorie. Carrie.
This week is really difficult to have equanimity. Actually, the past month, my co-parenting grandparent, my ex-husband's wife, who we're all very close to, is in hospice after a horrible couple months of trying to beat bladder cancer. And it all happens very fast. She's young and trying to stay centered so that I can be available to my children. That was their stepmother while they were growing up,
Hmm.
my grandchildren's nana, and a friend. It's been really, really hard. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I haven't totally stopped doing what I normally do, but I find that staying focused on the day to day, I'm ignoring the news completely because I can't deal with that aspect and the personal one at the same time.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, it's been tough, but I'm trying. I'm using Mussar to guide me, and it's just so tragic. So it's just really, really.
Sorry.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, listening with an open heart, that sounds very difficult. And I wonder, Bonnie had described kind of this teeter-totter being kind of up and down. And I'm wondering, maybe we could talk about what does not being centered look like? Like what sorts of behaviors show up for you? Um, what are some of the things that kind of happen when we are really not centered? For me, I have trouble sleeping. I get short with people. Um, what else can happen? Yeah, Carrie and then Bonnie.
I was thinking, and I get so focused on a project or an artwork when you get into the zone, that to me is I'm centered on the project, but I'm not centered in the rest of my life.
Mm,
I'm just so that's another imbalance.
mhm.
Not a bad one, but it's just you get so focused on something and forget that you're about your surroundings.
Boy, can I relate to that? When I was writing my thesis in the last 6 weeks of that, there was just, not a lot else going on. And I wasn't necessarily difficult to be around, but I probably wasn't a lot of fun to be around either, because I just didn't have much mental energy for anything else. So Bonnie, and then Sue, and then Toby.
So for me, my ADHD has kicked in so high that I look around and I think, who is this?
Mm,
And I'm doing a lot of just pausing.
mm,
And I was sharing with Karen, who's not on, that an Al-Anon term I learned last week for pause was pause. Okay, I have it written down. I'll put it in the chat because I can't right now, honest engine, I can't remember what it is. So somebody else can speak and I'll come back. So
Okay,
just
thanks, Bonnie. We love your Al-Anon acronyms. There's so many good ones you've shared with us over the last
thanks.
year. So, okay, Sue.
So when Carrie was speaking about being centered in artwork, that gave me my thought process now is when I'm centered in something, I'm in the moment. And that's such a great feeling to not be thinking about, not worrying about the past or the future, and just being in that moment and focusing in on what I'm doing. And to me, I think that's kind of like centering. And then also when I brought up the word about centering, I was thinking, I'm a big basketball person. I played basketball. And for some reason, my body went to when we do a drill and we're centered, and we either pass, you have to be totally centered in your body, and you either pass, dribble, or shoot. And it's a basketball analogy, but it's just being in that place in that moment, and then being able to do either those three things. But mostly it's being in the moment, which is what I'm trying to do more now, is live in this moment and not be worried about what happened or what's going to happen, because there's so much out there to worry about.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. So we'll hear from Toby, and then we'll circle back to Bonnie.
When I think of not equanimity, what I think of is a panic attack. I'm subject to, I have anxiety disorder, and when I am confronted with whatever piece of bad news for a period of time, and sometimes it's a short period of time, and sometimes it's a longer period of time, usually no more than an hour or two. But for that period of time, my mind is so consumed with whatever it was that I heard that was horrifying, that my frontal lobe goes offline. It's sort of like, oh, sorry, out to lunch. See you later. It comes back, fortunately. I'm hoping that is a good thing. But for a period of time, and it depends on how long, as I say, how bad the news is, I'm not really capable of making a rational decision. And so I don't. I usually go and I try to do something real relaxing, or I'll go and work out or something like that. But for that period of time, until my mind processes whatever it was that I heard that was so distressing, I'm at in therapy talk, I guess the anxiety scale is 1 to 10. I'm probably at an 8 or a 9. And at that point, my brain is not, my higher functions are not functioning. So that's just me.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think we all, to one degree or another, have had those moments. And obviously with anxiety disorder, that's going to come up more often. But yeah, when we really are pushed off, then we're just not making rational decisions. So thank you, Toby, for sharing that. Back to Bonnie.
Okay, I found it. It's in my notes.
Okay.
Pause, and I'll put it in the chat if people would like it. Pause stands for please assist until serenity enters.
Mm.
And then I repeat the serenity prayer again and again. And that is what's been helping me.
Mm. And maybe for people who aren't familiar with the Serenity Prayer, can you remind us of what that is?
It's a prayer that I believe came out of AA, and Al-Anon came out of AA, which is for people who've been affected by the disease of alcohol, and there are all kinds of other 12-step programs. It works for me. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'll put the pause in the chat for people if they'd like it.
Yeah, please do. Thank you. Well, I think that's a good segue to kind of take this a little bit deeper. Okay. So now that we're warmed up, maybe does someone want to unmute and read this first bullet?
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
A person who has mastered peace of mind has gained everything. To obtain peace of mind, you need to be at peace with your emotions and desire. Rabbi Simcha Zissel Ziv, the altar of Kelm.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm once again going to stop the share and I will put this in the chat. But I love the first part of this. You know, the person who has gained peace of mind has gained everything. As someone who've had my struggles from time to time with anxiety, it's like, yeah, when you're really sort of, again, back to this word centered, when we're not kind of all over the place, it feels really good. It's a much better life. But what does he say in the second part? How do we get this peace of mind? Thank you, Paul, for sharing that. Yeah, Sarah.
I think for me, the way I keep my peace of mind is by staying in the present moment.
Mhm.
And that's about the only way I can really hang on to my center pretty well. And I mean, if I'm exercising or if I'm involved in a vigorous activity, that keeps me centered. But you know, I can stay most centered when I'm meditating or when I'm reading or when I'm walking. I think that, you know, worry and anxiety takes me outside of myself and out of my center.
Mhm.
And the more I can stay in today, the more centered I can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Paul.
Yeah, I think that to the point of the part that you had put in the chat, I think that experiencing my emotions and desires is one thing, being at peace with them is something else, and sort of allowing them to be present, and all, you know, the way that I attempt to sort of visualize this when I'm trying to do it is I try to surround it with enough room within me that they can do what they need to do, but I observe it almost like being, you know, an outside observer of it, that it's there, that it's me that's experiencing these. But it's really hard to do because so many times I get pulled right into whatever they are. And, you know, so what Carrie was talking about with this extended family member that we share grandparenting duties with, it was something that was almost subterranean for me. It was, I could feel that there was something that was underneath the covers for me. I couldn't really express it very well because that's just how I'm made. But over time, I was able to talk, talked about it during an Al-Anon meeting, and that helped. And eventually I sent a message to her via her husband, and that released it. I was able to then experience more of the grief and yet allow myself to just be okay with that. But before that, it was overwhelming, to be quite honest. I felt like it would be taken over. So the way that I protect myself in those cases is I just kind of keep it under wraps, which isn't healthy, but
Yeah.
eventually I find a way of getting it out. So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Certainly does.
It's
to me,
hard.
Paul, and thank you so much for sharing that. And it is really hard. And I think what you're illustrating is another way that we could be out of equanimity. It's like, yeah, we can be all anxious and our mind can be going. But the other extreme of equanimity is just to shut down completely, is just to, it's either to be frantic or to just completely shut down. And as you say, these are self-protective mechanisms. Either I'm worried about a fear and that part of the brain gets going, or this is just overwhelming, it's too much for me, I need to shut it off for a while until I'm ready to cope with it. And I think grief is such a good example, because certainly for me, it's easier to see with grief how overwhelming it can be, and having, you know, still not, we're coming up, a week from today is going to be the fourth yard-side, the fourth anniversary of my mother's death. So I've been thinking about her quite a bit. And there's nothing to do, but grief wants to be seen, it wants to be felt, it wants to be experienced, and we just have to kind of sit with it and feel crappy. And for a time we may not be ready to do that, but yeah, so I say again, Paul, thank you for sharing that, because it sounds like you did find the supportive environment where you could begin to talk about it and begin to let it in. And it is difficult. And so those are kind of the clear examples, but then we get these sort of everyday, jostlings that happen. And sometimes the reactions to those are bigger than we might expect them to be. But it's also maybe not easier, but it's more tractable, kind of get a handle on those than the big grief, or the big events.
Maybe we have more practice with the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. And
I
something,
find,
yeah, go ahead, Marjorie.
I was just gonna say, like, I just think about incidences like with the car, like you get a flat tire, or you're going along and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, or a light comes on your dash, or something technical goes wrong, the computer's not working. In that moment I get crazy, but I find it like, okay, there's resolution, like stop. I like your pause a lot. I love Bonnie's pause concept, where stop, think about it, there's going to be a solution, and if not, there's a Yiddish term, nishka feralach, it's not a big deal. So, and in the bigger, there are far bigger things that, if something is that great, like grief, for example, I find I have more time to spread it out, to process it. And that's what I like about in the Jewish life cycle, we have a long period of mourning. You have 30 days of, is that Shiva, right? And you have
Shiva is a week.
Oh, that's the 7, right?
Is the 30.
What is the 30, please?
Shloshim.
Shloshim.
So
which
we
is
have
the Hebrew word
that.
for 30. So they've cleverly named it 30.
Okay. So I find that having that time period where you can, it's comforting to me, where I can actually go and say Kaddish for 30 days over a great loss. And I just find it's easier when it's divided up like that for me.
Yeah. No, it is helpful, and the customs say, okay, well, you don't do very much during the first week, and then during the 30 days, you could start to re-enter the world, but you probably don't want to go to a party, or you shouldn't go to a party. You know, people interact with these traditions in different ways, but yeah, I think it's recognizing something important. Okay, let's go back to our slides. I don't think we're going to discuss this one, but I do want to speak to it because I think Paul mentioned it, you know, and I mentioned Eckhart Tolle's work as well, this idea of kind of separating the higher mind from the thinking mind. Or maybe we can talk about it. This is kind of the essence of mindfulness. You know, there's a deeper self beside the self. You know, I am not my thoughts. I am the entity who has the thoughts, but they're not me. And these can be hard concepts to understand because the logical mind can't actually understand itself and can't envision a world that the logical mind is not the be all and end all of everything. But from a spiritual standpoint, we are something more than just our thoughts. I'm going to stop the share again, and we can spend time on this or not. But any kind of thoughts or comments about that?
Can you put it up again, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
that,
it'd be
yeah,
really helpful for me to see it.
yeah. Okay, so Paul and then Bonnie.
Yeah, this is kind of what I was getting at when I was speaking before. So I appreciate the clear description, at least clear for me. But certainly, it's being able to have I like the idea of a deeper self that is separate from the thought process itself. And for a more prosaic example, I'm out in California visiting my mom, and I rented an electric vehicle, an EV. And so I was last night looking for a place to charge this car. And after going to 3 different places where each time either the thing was out of order or it was telling me that it was having problems with my car, I finally got very frustrated. And it's one of those times where it's already late. I'm tired because it's the first day of being in California, so I'm dealing with, time zone differences, and I have to go to the bathroom, but I'm trying to get this thing done. And I finally just had to do some basic deep breathing and just accept that this is where we were. And I had to make a phone call to the help desk and have them walk me through it. And then they finally said, yep, that one's not working. So go to the next one next door. That seems to be okay. And then it was okay. So it was needing to be okay with feeling frustrated and feeling tired and feeling, grumpy about the whole thing, but knowing that I still needed to move forward with something in a positive way. So when the person was helping me, I decided, well, I didn't decide, but I knew that it wouldn't make any sense for me to start yelling at the person because they're helping me, right? Even though they're part of the problem in the thinking mind. It's like, well, clearly you should have known this already. Why didn't you already know this thing wasn't working? But anyway, that's kind of what gives you an example for me. And I was glad when I got back home and I was able to go to sleep. So end of story. Thank you.
Bonnie, I saw your hand there for a moment. Was there something? Nope. Okay. Harry.
I don't know if anybody's been exposed to something called CPT, cognitive behavior therapy, and DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. And this is a classic thing that you're taught, and that is your thoughts are not reality. Your thoughts are not reality. They're just your thoughts. And where you get into trouble, we all get into trouble because we think it is reality.
Hmm.
And sometimes you have to be reminded that it's not, it's just your thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Harry. Marjorie.
I also think in certain circumstances for me, I give myself permission to get a little, like it's okay to get angry. Fortunately, I have Mussar to draw me back in a lot quicker than maybe 20 years ago. I might have yelled at somebody, or I might have I don't know, probably more yelling than anything else. I don't think I'd behave too radically, but it's okay to feel certain emotions in certain circumstances for me, and then bring it back, just reel it right back in
Mhm.
to that center, wherever that might be.
Thanks, Marjorie. Yeah, Mussar helps. It does. It certainly does. Okay, so here's our spectrum. I want to get us to our breakout rooms pretty soon, but I feel like I'm pretty impressed that we sort of have covered a lot of this already today. We've talked about too little equanimity, what I'm calling here the hysterical or the anxious. And then the too much equanimity is kind of what we were talking about as being shut down, oblivious, ambivalent, nothing really matters, and kind of finding that place where, a lot of these things that are upsetting us, they're really important things. They are not, they're things that touch upon our values, that touch upon our safety, that touch upon things that are really important to us. And so, this is what we've been trained for in our Mussar practice to kind of help us navigate these times. But even, Mussar can only help so much. It's still the work. It's still doing the work and kind of getting in there. Also, to just talk a little bit, just to remind you of the mantra, it's better to surf the waves of life than to get pounded or swept away. And these things that happen, they come in and it's the big wave, and we can try to surf it, and it's not like it's going to be smooth or steady, but getting swept out to sea or just getting, wiped out by the wave is no fun. And so, yeah, so trying to surf. I'm going to give us something different for our breakout groups, but I came across this today in a Safarius source sheet by Rabbi Lauren Gabriel Herman. And so we'll kind of look these over, and then we'll go into breakout groups, and then you can kind of talk about maybe which one sort of resonates with you. So 3 ways of kind of practicing equanimity. One is staying independent or above the fray, not depending on other people for validation, or, not sort of reading too much into our personal struggles, which for me, I can kind of relate to that a little bit. Like I had a networking call with somebody today, and I was kind of hoping that there might be a project for me there, and there wasn't. So I can, create a story about there's something wrong with me and why doesn't anyone want to, whatever. Or it can be like, okay, that's why you do a lot of networking calls, because there's just not everything's a fit for everybody. So distancing yourself from kind of extreme reactions. And she had said pride and anger. I also put in euphoria. I think if we get too caught up in euphoria, that also can drag us away from equanimity. And then the third one, which I really love, is just moving towards the light. Like, yeah, we can be that watcher, we can witness the inner struggles, but we always try our best to kind of move towards the light, towards possibility. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to put these in the chat. And then for the breakout rooms, just how do you resonate with these? Which one might you want to focus on in the coming week? Okay. Oh, wait, I gotta switch you guys to. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, how are those discussions? And would anyone like to share something that came up or that you found an insight you had, an interesting discussion point? Yeah, Sue.
I'll just start with the last thing we talked about was artwork. And how soothing that is and that during the pandemic, Toby was talking about how everyone got those coloring books
Wow.
and how that was very centering and calming and created equanimity. I thought that was a really good point. So but finding something, the larger point that we discussed is finding something that you can be in the moment doing, and is important. And I think we tended to lean with the first one of the three, as in trying not to take it personally when things happen to you, and to be working on that for the next week.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, what you're talking about with the artwork, it kind of reminds me of this idea I brought up in the email about something that anchors you, artwork could absolutely be sort of an anchoring activity. Yeah. Okay. What else? Yeah, Sarah.
I guess, it came up in our group about grief and how, whoops, where did I go?
There you go. Whoop, there you go. Now you're back.
I'm on a different machine today. And I mean, I think that, and you brought, it just reminds me of that saying, it's better to go with the flow, but sometimes really hard things come up. And I think that we have to, we can feel our feelings and remember that we're not our feelings. But I think that if we don't feel our feelings, it's not good. I mean, I think that, it's best to experience the grief, because one person was talking about grief. And I mean, and I know for myself, the only way through it is through it, feeling it. And what I've learned just over time in, these past few years is that, you feel your feelings and then it passes. You don't die. Sometimes you think you're going to die. And, my thought about, these different principles was, I want to try to be more even, not have such high waves and low downs, big, and it's like, the euphoria and the anger, I just want to be more even. And that's, and the way that it works best for me is by practicing principles of Mussar and mindfulness and meditation, and studying Mussar, and doing these kinds of things to remind me to pause, and just try not to do too much. That's really important for me, and then I'm less likely to fly off the handle. So
Thank you, Sarah. There's a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, I'm really I'm resonating. Who else would like to share kind of what they're gonna focus on in the coming week? Something interesting that came up in discussion. Yeah, Marjorie.
I'm unmuted, aren't I?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, because it says, okay. For me, is finding that is going into the light. The other two, I found that I'm going to experience all three of these, but right now I need to focus on mostly on just finding the good, the joy, and the negative gives me a reason to go out and find it. Like if it's just getting up and getting outside, and right now things are just blossoming, and spring is so beautiful, and look at that, like how much greater the beauty is than the detriment. Like that beauty is so much more powerful to me. And that is all. Deep party.
A great
Those-
example of practicing one soul
Wow.
trait to help balance another, practicing gratitude, noticing the good, going to the light. Love it. Thank you. Bonnie.
So for me, this last 2 weeks, especially last night, I was on a national board meeting, is to find one small thing that I can do that might make a difference. And it really was hearing from the UCLA person about what was going on there. Information that I did not know. He's been there 40 years. And at the end, he said, Hillel is the organization that is holding these kids together. And I'm going to ask you to make, every one of you, it was the National Jewish Board, every one of you to make a donation. So I can tell them it's coming from this group. And I thought, yes, doesn't matter what level it is, as long as it's meaningful to me, I will have done something. I can do nothing about the actual encampments or the fighting, but I can do something about the Hillel. So if I can find something small that makes a difference sideways, it makes me feel much better.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, action feels better than inaction. And positive action is better than negative action. So anyone who we haven't heard from today care to share anything? I found this very powerful, and I think for my practice, I think I'm going to make myself a big note that says, don't take it personally, because that would be really helpful for me right now. Yeah. So I think that's going to be my mantra for the next week. So let's gather ourselves, and we have a little bit of extra time for maybe a little bit longer than usual meditation, which is a great thing to do for equanimity. So I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. Close your eyes and take in a nice leisurely breath. And a nice leisurely exhale. And settle into a nice rhythm of breathing. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.